Hi, my name is Mara Linsky-Deegan, and I am the Associate Curator and Registrar here at the Charles H. McNider Art Museum in Mason City, Iowa. And today we're going to talk just a little bit about the artist Jaune Smith. She was born in 1940 on the St. Ignatius Reservation, or Mission, on the Flathead Reservation in Montana. Member of the Confederate Salish and Kootenai Nations in Montana. And as a child, she was raised by a single father, and he was a horse trader and also worked in rodeos. And that meant that she moved around quite a bit as a child. She also spent some time in foster care, and that was when he wasn't able to take care of her. So she got pretty good as a child, going back and forth between indigenous culture, which is the way she was raised, and the majority culture, which was mostly white culture. And sometimes that meant that she was either teased or kind of looked down upon because she wasn't a white person living in a white culture. She was an indigenous person living in a white culture. And you might think today, well, that's weird. I don't think people would be so interested in that. But you have to remember that this was probably in the 1940s and the 1950s, when it was a little bit different if you were not part of the majority culture, in this case white. It was a little bit harder to navigate, to go to school and stuff, just because you looked different and maybe you did things a little bit different. So as a child, Jaune Smith really enjoyed doing all kinds of artistic things. Drawing, like taking a stick, like a lot of kids do, taking a stick and drawing in the dirt, making all kinds of drawings with crayons and colored pencils. She even, I've read an interview where she recalled that when she first started kindergarten and really got into working with art supplies, that she just loved everything about them, the smell, the way they were so colorful. She really thought that was great. And so she always kind of had art as part of her life as a young child. But when she was in middle school, about middle school age, she had got the opportunity to go see a movie about the artist Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, and he is a artist that was in France in the last century, so in the 1800s, and he into the early 1900s. But he was an artist and kind of a fun guy who liked to do all kinds of cool stuff. And she saw this film about him and thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be a professional artist. That would be a great job. I didn't really know you could do art professionally, and this kind of inspired her to pursue that track. Some of the things, though, again, she was growing up mostly in the 1950s when she was a middle schooler and a high schooler. And at that time, it was a little bit odd for a woman to want to be an artist professionally. There were women who did it, but it was not something that a lot of people thought was available to everybody. So even though she really thought that this would be a great career, she did have teachers, especially in high school, who said, you know, you're a great artist, you do things very well, but because you're a woman, it's going to be a lot harder for you. I don't think you should become an artist. And so she did have some kind of challenges to overcome that maybe, like I said, people thought maybe she couldn't do it because she was a woman, but she thought, you know, I really like art, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to go forward. So in 1960, she did earn her associate's degree in art from Olympic College in Bremerton, Washington. So it took her some time, but while working and also going to school in 1976, she did get her Bachelor of Arts in Art Education from Framingham State College in Massachusetts. And then again, still working and going to school, she really wanted to pursue her career in art, so she decided it would be a great idea to get a master's degree. So in 1980, she did get her MA, which is a Master of Arts in Visual Arts, from the University of New Mexico. The piece we have in our collection is a print. It is a color lithograph, and it is called Horse Sense, and it was created in 1994. Jaune Smith is actually an artist that's a little bit different from some of the other artists we have in our collection, in that she likes to use all kinds of media. Sometimes artists stick to one thing, like they only do oil paintings, or they only do prints, or they only do drawings. Or maybe they'll branch out just a little bit, like they'll do some drawings and some paintings. but they might not do sculpture or mixed media pieces. And she kind of does it all. She does printmaking, drawing, painting, mixed media, installations, you name it, she does it, which I think is really interesting. So it makes it so that you can see one work, like the piece we have here, a print, and say, oh yeah, but then you might see something completely different when you see an installation. That means something that maybe takes up space, like kind of like a sculpture, or maybe even a painting, or mixed media pieces where sometimes there are paper and 3D elements all put together. So she, as an artist, doesn't stick to one thing, which I think is really cool. Another thing that she does very well, and a lot of her pieces have this, is that she makes comments about current society with her pieces. And I don't mean she says things, which she does sometimes, but the actual piece itself says things about our society and different parts of our society. So when you look at this piece here, for somebody looking at it, like me, when I look at it, I might see one thing. But you looking at it, because you probably have a different viewpoint than I do, and maybe a different way you grew up and a different way you look at the world, you might look at the same piece and see something completely different. And I think that's a really cool thing with her work, is that anybody looking at it can kind of take something from their background and see it in her work. Now, again, she is from an indigenous background, so a lot of times she does comment on things that she knew growing up and things that her experiences that she had. But even though it's experiences that she had, it might affect you and relate to you via experiences you had, which I think is really cool. So anybody looking at this piece right here, and I'll give you a chance to look at it in just a second here, you might take something completely different away from it than I do. So I'm going to get out of the way so you can get in nice and close and take a look at all that's going on here. So, Jaune Smith is a living artist. She is still working today. She lives in New Mexico, and she works there. And one of the things I think is very interesting about her as a person and an artist is that she's very concerned with how art has an impact on our environment. And you might think, art has an impact on our environment. I don't understand how that would work. But she thinks about things like a lot of artists, when they're using materials, use things that are very toxic and can harm the environment. They might use paint thinners to clean their brushes, or if they're a printmaker, they might use different kinds of chemicals to burn their images onto metal plates and things. And some of that stuff can be very toxic. You can't touch it with your hands and you can't breathe it in. And she really thinks about how that has an impact on us. She also thinks about things like storage. If you think, I think about this all the time because that's part of my job, but there is a lot of energy that goes into storing art that people don't even get to see. And I don't mean like in a gallery like we're in now. I mean like in storage areas when we have pieces even that are not on display all the time. We can't display everything we have. So we have to have a place where we heat and control the environmental regulations and everything while we store the artwork. And that does take up a lot of resources in mostly energy. So we're talking about energy from coal, energy from hydroelectric dams, energy sometimes from renewable sources like solar or wind power energy. But it does take energy to store all that. And so she and other artists like her are trying to think about minimizing the impact of toxic chemicals and things used to create art and also storage. Another thing she thinks about, which I think is very interesting because again, it's something I deal with a lot, is the transportation of artwork. You might not even think about the fact that if you have an artwork, let's say like this, that's going to travel around and maybe be at several different museums, it has to get there. And sometimes that means flying it. And that takes a lot of gas to take a plane and fly a piece from one place to another. Or it means driving it, which again takes gasoline, or using a train, which could take all kinds of different things from coal to gas to electric, depends on what kind of train you take. So there's all these things that she's thinking about when she's creating her art, which I find very fascinating that artists, especially artists who are working today, are really thinking about these things and the impact that their art has on the environment. So I want you to take a minute and think about the last piece of art that you created and think about if there's any impact on the environment that that piece had. You might think, no, I just took a piece of paper and I drew something with a pencil. But think about all the resources that go into making that paper. Think about all the resources that go into creating that pencil. And you can really see how one person's artwork could have an impact, and so can yours.